Hi, I'm United States Senator Pat Toomey. Welcome to the 2021 Youth Civic Engagement Symposium. For the past 6 years, my office has worked with local partners to put together this symposium that not only celebrates Constitution Day, but also provides an opportunity for high school students to learn about government at all levels. Our founders drafted an amazing Constitution that set forth really the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever seen. And it's really important that each of us and all of you attending today understand where the Constitution vests the various powers of government, among other things, and at which levels of government. I'm grateful that so many interesting and talented individuals representing different branches of government and different levels of government are here with you today to discuss their important respective roles. Lastly, thank you to all of those who've worked with my office to organize today's event. Gannon University, Erie Together, Erie Insurance, and National Fuel Company Foundation. I wish you all an interesting and successful symposium.
Thank you, Senator Toomey. Hello, my name is Sheila Sterrett, and I'm the Western PA Director for U.S. Senator Pat Toomey. Although Senator Toomey spends most of his time in Washington, D.C. and travels throughout Pennsylvania, I've had the privilege for working with him in Erie in the Pittsburgh office for the last 11 years. Today we're going to focus on the federal government. The federal government is composed of three distinctive branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, whose powers are vested in the U.S. Constitution, in the Congress, the President, and the federal courts, respectively. There are hundreds of federal agencies and commissions charged with handling responsibilities as varied as managing Americans' space program, protecting its forests, gathering intelligence, and advancing the general welfare of the American people. Today on our panel, we are joined by 4 leaders representing a variety of different roles under the umbrella of the federal government. Representing the judicial branch of government, we have Judge Lanzello. Representing the executive branch of government, we have Todd Carlson. Representing the legislative branch of government, we have Brad Moore. And representing the military branch of government, we have Lieutenant Colonel Lafountain. At this point, I'm going to ask each of them to give a little background of themselves and tell us how they got to their current positions. Judge Lanzello?
Thank you, Sheila. Well, as you just heard, my name is Richard Lanzillo, and I'm a United States Magistrate Judge, a member of the judicial branch of the federal government. I am one of 4 federal judges who preside in the federal courthouse here in Erie. I was appointed to my position about 3 years ago. Prior to my current position, I was a practicing trial attorney with a law firm that had about 45 lawyers. I currently serve a term of 8 years, at the conclusion of which I am eligible for reappointment. And I'm very excited to tell you a little bit more about my position and some opportunities that may exist for all of you in a career in the law.
And next, we're going to ask Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Lafountain to introduce himself.
Thank you, Sheila. As Sheila stated, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Lafountain. I've been in the United States Army for 22 years, and I came through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, which is the program that I now lead here at Gannon University as the Professor of Military Science. As a member of the United States Army, we are part of the larger Department of Defense. We serve directly under the direction of the President of the United States, and so in that way we're part of the executive branch of government. As an Army officer, I've served across the world. I've been on multiple deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan. I've served in Korea. I've served in Europe. I've had many opportunities, and so now as the leader of the ROTC program here at Gannon University, I will be guiding young college students in their desires to become officers in the United States Army like myself.
Thank you. And Todd Carlson?
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Senator Toomey, Erie Together, and Gannon University for giving us the opportunity to speak to the local high school kids. As Sheila said, my name's Todd Carlson. I'm an inspector with the Department of Homeland Security Federal Protective Service. I've been in the federal service for approximately 28 years now. At FPS, our primary mission is to conduct threat and risk assessments on federal facilities. I currently am responsible for 18 counties in Northwest PA. We are also a federal police force. We provide security law enforcement services for about 9,500 facilities across the U.S. We also support other agencies during natural disasters, civil unrest, and lately humanitarian causes down on the southwest border. Thank you.
And lastly, Brad Moore.
Thank you, Sheila. My name is Brad Moore. I'm the District Director for Congressman G.T. Thompson, which is a fancy way of saying I manage and run the district operations for the Congressman. Every legislator has a Washington operation and a district operation, and I manage and run the three offices and all the operations in his congressional district here in Western and Central Pennsylvania. I've been doing this off and on for 3 different congressmen for 14 years, and look forward to talking a little more about it.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go on to specific questions. First, we'll start with Judge Lanzello. You are a former attorney that became a U.S. Magistrate judge. How does someone become an attorney or a judge, and what types of education and testing are required?
Well, let me start first by explaining the process for becoming an attorney. The traditional or typical educational route is 4 years of undergraduate education at a college or university, followed by 3 years of law school education. As far as high school students entering college and what you should study, I don't recommend a particular major or course of study. If you want to study criminal justice, if you want to study biology, English, what have you, that's not the critical consideration. What is important, though, is that you develop good analytical and writing skills in whatever you study. And then once you finish your undergraduate education, you apply to law schools. There's an admission exam that most law schools require. It's referred to as the Law School Admission Test, or LSAT, like the SAT you take to get into college only for law school. Hopefully you get into the school of your choice, and then from there you pursue 3 years of legal education. And then after that process, after you graduate, you have one final hurdle to clear in most states, and that's known as the bar examination. You need that to get your license to practice law in a given jurisdiction, and then you're off and running. Whether you want to have a career as a criminal prosecutor or a defense attorney, a civil trial attorney like I was before I became a judge, those are all available to you. And now, as far as how do you become a magistrate judge or any other judge, it varies from state to federal court. I was appointed through a process known as merit selection. So was Judge Baxter, who is our U.S. District Court judge. She was appointed by the President of the United States and then confirmed by the Senate. I was appointed by the U.S. District judges in this jurisdiction after a vetting process. That's in contrast to if you want to become a state court judge. In Pennsylvania, for example, we elect all of our state court judges from the trial court level up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which means you run in a primary election. There are partisan elections where you designate a party preference, or you cross-file in some cases for parties, but then you run as you would in any other election in the primary and in the general election. So the two systems are very different.
And can you, as a magistrate judge, what kind of cases do you hear? And is there anyone that specifically stands out that you'd like to share with the students? We hear all types of federal civil and criminal cases. There are 3 I'm going to tick off very quickly that I'll always remember. The first was my first days on the job when I had to determine whether a young man accused of federal drug violations and firearms violations had to be incarcerated while he awaited trial. That will always stay with me because it was the first time as a former civil attorney where I had to actually deal with someone's liberty, and this person was no older than my own children, and so that will always impact me. And although I was required to, the law dictated that I incarcerated that person, it was not
a difficult decision. And then as of even Friday, I had a case where an individual was suing a police officer for civil rights violations. He had been shot in the back and asserted that he was no danger to the officer and was simply fleeing an illegal arrest, whereas the police officer testified that in fact there had been serious resistance to arrest followed by vicious attack by this plaintiff. And in that case, it is this collision between the critical functions police officers, law enforcement serve, and their right to not be attacked by individuals, and versus the position of the plaintiff who asserted his civil rights were violated. So I always remember cases like that, and they come up on a regular basis. And then finally, just mentioned briefly, it's not always a sad day in the courtroom. Sometimes people are happy to be there. I gratefully have the opportunity regularly to preside at naturalization ceremonies where I administer the oath of citizenship to immigrants who have qualified to be new citizens of the United States. So those are happy days, and I'm grateful for those as well.
Great, thank you. And Lieutenant Colonel, you're a member of the Armed Forces. If a student would like to serve his country, what steps should he take, and what made you decide to go that route?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. So I have a long family history of military service going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. I'm third generation Army, second generation officer. First to do it as a career though, so but a long standing tradition. In a way, it's kind of like joining the family business, so to speak. As far as entering the service, there's really multiple ways. The easiest way is probably to just enlist. That's how a lot of our soldiers do it. They'll enlist in the service for a period of time, go through basic training, their advanced individual training, then they'll go to their units and serve as soldiers, whether in the active force, guard, reserve. For myself, I went through ROTC. I knew that I wanted to be an officer. Went to college, got my degree, and then I was appointed as an officer in the United States Army by the President of the United States. So for officers, when we get commissioned, we're all appointed directly by the President. And beyond that, there's lots of ways once you're in the service, whether you want to go officer, there's programs, but really those are the two primary ways: enlistment or through some kind of appointment process through a college program.
Can you give a little bit more explanation what ROTC is? Is that something available to students at the high school and college level both?
Yes, so there is Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is a high school program, which really focuses on teaching leadership, discipline, really developing the character of students at the high school level. I'm sure many of you students have been through that program, or you've seen your classmates go through that program at your high school if it's offered there. At the college level, the university level, we have the Senior ROTC program, which is what I run. For that, there's no commitment for the first couple of years. We encourage anybody who's interested in service, come out, take our classes. It's about 3 credit hours that you'll earn for it that can go towards your degree as a general elective. And it's a great way to really, participate in what we do, see if the Army is a good fit for you. If you have any interest level at all, we encourage you to come take our class, see what it's all about, come talk to us, and we're happy to get you on that pathway if that's what you would like to do.
Great. And you mentioned that you're Gannon University's military science program. Can you explain what a military science program is and what does it prepare students for?
Right, so the ROTC program and our military science courses, that's the foundation for how we develop and build college students and transform them into Army officers to become second lieutenants. As a second lieutenant, you're going to be put right away into a leadership position. So you'll be leading soldiers, you'll be managing property, you'll be administering counseling, you'll be taking care of soldiers. So we focus a lot at the ROTC program on building that character, developing scholars, athletes, and leaders to go out into the Army at large, whether again through active duty, guard, reserve, whichever component you choose, and prepare you for those leadership roles to basically lead soldiers.
Okay, great, thank you. And Todd Carlson, You've been a member of the U.S. Secret Service and now employed by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Throughout your career, you've been assigned to the White House, Olympic Games, presidential inaugurations, and several natural disasters. What has it been like to be part of those things, and and are those experiences that you can share with us?
Thank you. I can just say, looking back at my career, it's been an amazing ride. It really has been. I started with the Department of Justice up in Buffalo. Job didn't really suit my goals and desires, so I applied for the Secret Service, was accepted, went through their academies, and was assigned to the White House. During my time there, I can't even explain it real well, but it was amazing. You know, from the behind the scenes, what goes on daily at the White House, to the big events, the inaugurations, the state dinners, the major summits, the G20s and Middle East peace talks. Just what I got to experience was really indescribable. But the travel also, I did a lot of travel with the Secret Service. Got to see places I'd probably never see during presidential visits. One pretty cool story is I got called to return to, I grew up in Chautauqua County. Got called to accompany President Clinton on there's debate preparations at the institution up there. When I got there, I found out that one of my high school English teachers was actually one of the hosts running the event. So I got to reunite with her during a presidential debate. Fortunately, a president that she just admired, so it was pretty cool.
Great. And what kind of skills set does an individual need, like, to pursue some of the positions that you've held?
I think analytical thinking is very important, whether it's through the assessments we conduct, the threat assessment, risk assessments. Gather a lot of information, and being able to collect it, analyze it, and then put it together and do a outcome, whether it's a vulnerability recommendation, a countermeasure recommendation. So analytical thinking is huge. I think more than anything for myself is just the ability to listen. Winston Churchill said it best when he said courage is the ability to stand up and speak, but he said it's also the ability to sit down and listen. And I think the ability to listen is, in anything you do in life, will take you a long way.
Okay. And if there's one, besides the stuff at Chautauqua, one other memorable event that placed, what would you share with the students?
There are just so many. I always recall opening the White House to the public. You heard it, you hear the stories about in the old days, the Easter egg roll, something so small, but just to see the public enjoy the White House grounds. And I know a lot has changed since I've been there, but just to see people enjoy their house, the White House, is pretty amazing.
Okay, great, thank you. And Brad Moore, you've served as a district director for a congressman in Pennsylvania for quite a few years. Can you tell us what your job entails and some of the duties you perform and what means when the congressman is in district with you or when he's not in district with you?
Sure. As a district director, you manage and oversee a team of people that perform really three core functions. Number one is the constituent service operation. So if constituents have problems with the federal government in any way, shape, or form, whether it's the IRS, the Department of Veterans Affairs, Social Security Administration, you name it, across the entire federal government spectrum, we act as an advocate on your behalf to either help you navigate through the system or a bit of a broker to help try to solve a situation that necessarily doesn't fit within standard regulations. The second part of that is kind of an outreach operation. So this may be answering your second question, Sheila. We are the congressman when he is not here. He spends in a typical month outside of Easter and August, spends 3 weeks a month in Washington, D.C., 1 week a month at home. So that leaves 3 weeks where he needs to be represented at community meetings, at different interest group meetings, local government meetings, economic development projects, you name it. We serve as his voice and his advocate and his spokesperson at those events. Thirdly is really a scheduling operation. Congressman's office receives, on average, 150 scheduling requests a month. Spread that in the current district I work in over 14 counties, and the congressman's only here 1 week a month and weekends. So that leaves a lot of organization to do, sometimes an ability to say no, which is never fun, but we do the best we can to represent him when he is not here. When he is here, beyond organizing his schedule, he has to deal with a lot of information. So whether you work for a U.S. congressman or a U.S. senator or a governor, you'll see that they often have a staff member or two with them. It's called staffing the member. The idea there is there's no possible way for them to retain all the information they are getting at the time. So you're acting as their right hand or their left hand to make sure they're organized, they're prepared, and ready for whatever's presented to them that particular day or that upcoming week.
Okay, great. And what type of skills are required to fulfill the duties that you serve?
So I'm going to plagiarize a bit what a couple of the other speakers have said. One of them is the ability to read, write, and think critically. If you can't do those three things, this is a very difficult career to have. Secondly, and I will quote my current boss, God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You have to be able to listen. And thirdly, our offices, we haven't touched on this yet, they're elected. A U.S. congressman is elected every 2 years, a U.S. senator is elected every 6 years, a governor every 4 years. By nature of that, people have to appreciate that the representation you are giving them. And you have to have people skills to be able to do that. If you don't like people, working in the legislative branch is not something that you should pursue. If you like people, this is something the beautiful thing about the position is it gives you access to people and programs and institutions that you'd never have access to otherwise.
Okay, great, thank you. The next 2 questions we have, we're going to have the entire panel answer them. So the first question is, when you took on your respective roles with a certain amount of education and awareness about what you were getting yourself into, but what is something that you faced that you didn't expect, and what has best helped prepare you to handle that? Judge Lanzello?
Sure. Well, as I indicated, I came to this position after 30-some years of practicing law in the civil arena. And as I alluded to earlier, for the first time in my career, I had to face decisions that affected people's liberty, whether they would be spend time incarcerated. And that was more jarring to me than I had anticipated. I remember the first time I made those decisions. I had a few sleepless nights afterwards, although I was confident I had made the right decision. That was a transition, and what got me through those initial difficult feelings in that transition was reminding myself of my oath, and that is to follow the Constitution and laws of the United States and apply the facts fairly and without regard to who was before me and who they were or where they came from. And I always found that reverting back and reflecting back on that oath and that obligation really carried me through any difficult times in this job. And it's something I think of daily in the work I do, and remind myself that is my obligation.
Anything that you did not expect?
I wouldn't say it wasn't expected. I think what it was something I underestimated was really the importance of the human dynamic within the military structure. As a leader, you're dealing with soldiers, and your primary responsibility is their care, welfare, well-being, getting them where they need to be, make sure they've got everything they need, and you know there's strife there, there's conflict, you know there's different things. You have to make decisions on someone's welfare, well-being, make recommendations to your commanders on disciplinary actions or punishments, and just being able to manage all that. You know, as a second lieutenant, you're managing up to 30 personnel at a given time as a platoon leader. And being able to manage personalities, manage those different needs and requirements based on the mission, based on those people. And it's something that really carries through your entire career. And I underestimated that initially. I wasn't really aware of how important that was, and I learned very quickly, and it carried me through. But the skills that I got through my training, through the ROTC program, as well as through my Army officer training, they did prepare me for that, and I just had to, knuckle down and really learn quickly just how important it was, and really, because that's all part of taking care of your soldiers. If you don't have the right mindset, you don't have that right attitude that the care and welfare of your soldiers is paramount, then you're not going to be successful. So that's probably the big thing that I learned early on, was really the importance of that human dynamic.
Okay, great. Mr. Carlson?
I think there's two things that come to mind. First are the 9/11 attacks. I don't think very many people were expecting or had any idea that aircraft would be used as weapons against this country. But Hurricane Katrina was something that really changed the way I looked at my job. I'd been through numerous academies, I'd been through numerous training programs, and nothing could prepare you for the sheer devastation that I witnessed on the Gulf Coast. I flew into Biloxi, Gulfport area, and you see the pictures of the flooding in New Orleans, which was just horrendous. Mississippi was a little bit different. We got down there, usually when we get deployed, we go on a law enforcement security mission for a specific area. Hurricane Katrina devastated the entire Gulf Coast. So we got down there initially as law enforcement support, turned into more of a security support, and ultimately a humanitarian support mission. To drive around the Mississippi Delta area and just talk to families that had absolutely lost everything. When the storm surge came in, it literally wiped everything they owned away. I can't tell you how many families I visited and all they had left was a concrete slab on their property. But related to that is the human resolve. We became that link, that hope that the government is here to help us, to give us the support and resources we need. But the resolve of the people down there was just incredible to me. It really changed the way I looked at doing my job.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Moore?
Two things come to mind. I came in after 9/11, but a lot of my colleagues that have been there before me, that's the one they reference. For us, it was the COVID pandemic. It was extremely unexpected. Hopefully we're on the back end of it now. But the sheer volume of assistance that was needed, a lot of public officials, not knowing what we were dealing with, made decisions, some good, some bad. Most of them affected the lives of a lot of people. And a congressman, particularly a U.S. congressman, is a frontline constituent service operation. So that's who constituents call when they have an issue. There were days we were getting up to 900 phone calls, and there was only 7 or 8 of us to field them. And in some ways, no way to help yet, or not knowing how to navigate the system that other public officials were creating. That was a huge challenge. Organizational skills helped navigate that. Communication skills especially helped navigate that. But that was my big, and 14 years off and on of doing this was the one I would say has been the most challenging to deal with. Secondly would be something I've learned as I've gotten older doing this, is the pace it takes to get something done. When I first started serving a U.S. House member, it frustrated me that sometimes you couldn't just make a call and solve a problem. The reality is that's not the way the framers designed our system, and there was a good reason for that. That for the greater public good, that sometimes the quick answer is not always the easy one. So I've learned to have more patience and understand that almost every project or problem, there's usually going to be a long methodical process to get to a solution. And I've come to accept that as a good thing, where if you'd asked me that question 14 years ago, I would have had a different opinion.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, and the final question for the panel. When you look back on your life, what advice would you have for students if they're interested in running for office or working for the government, entering the military, or just volunteering in their community? Go first. Thank you.
Sure, and this would apply to whatever you pursue in life, and that is to recognize that pretty much anything worth doing is going to be challenging and hard, and then that you cannot fear failure. You have to just put your nose to the grindstone and plow forward. Like Officer Carlson, I am fond of quotes from Winston Churchill, and he had one during World War II in terms of reflecting on hard times, and his advice was, if you're going through hell, keep going. And that is something you'll have to do in whatever career you pursue. There will be times that it's hard, but at the end of the process, if you do that, it can be so rewarding, regardless of whether it's military service or other forms of government or judicial service. When you get there, you'll be very grateful for the experience.
Right, thank you.
For the military, I think the biggest thing is you have to be ready for a challenge, and you have to be committed. Joining the military it's not a job you can just quit. So once you sign up and you make that commitment, you have to be ready for it. And it is a challenge, but it is a well worth the challenge. I've been doing this for 22 years now. I can't think of anything else I want to do. And I've always told myself I'd keep doing it as long as I was still enjoying it and it was fun. And I honestly still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, so I'm still doing it. But it's been a great ride, and you know, that's the biggest, really, the thing is it's a hard job. It's not easy. There are times when I have said, why am I doing this? Is this really where I want to be? But at the end of the day, being with soldiers, being with people, interacting with people, it's, again, as Mr. Moore said, you know, you got to be a people person a little bit and be able to interact with people. But if you're really, the bottom line is, if you're looking for a challenge and you want something that is going to be meaningful and something that gives back to the community, gives back to our nation, the military is a great opportunity for that. And as I stated before, we have lots of ways of making that happen. So, you know, slight recruiting pitch here, you know, please come see us, you know, our offices here in Gannon or any ROTC office if you're interested. There's a lot of money out there for it too, scholarship opportunities. So please, you know, give us a call.
Great. Mr. Carlson.
I would say if you're looking to join the government, federal government, don't be overwhelmed by the system. It is a massive system, and like Mr. Moore said, it's slow and deliberate. It takes time, but it's well worth it. So if you find something, and whether it's a big city, small town, there are jobs all over this country that need filling. So take the initiative, get involved, and you know, just stick to it, because it does get frustrating at times, but like I said, well worth it. For me, I was working at the White House. I wanted to get back to this area to raise a family. Federal Protective Service was looking to open a field office in Erie. Applied for the job, got it, and that's how I got back here. So I've done the big city, the smaller towns, and just a great experience. And as for the volunteer part, I encourage everyone to get involved, whether it's a big organization or a small local organization. You know, give your time, give your money, give your labor, give your love. Just get involved. You know, give something back, whether it's a friend, a neighbor, a stranger. You know, just make a difference. Be the difference.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Moore?
To work in the legislative branch, the skills I mentioned earlier, to be able to read, write, and think critically. We hear a lot about going into trades, and there's value in those, and there's job opportunity in those. But for working, if you're interested in working in a senior leadership position in the legislative branch, I can't stress enough the value of getting a college education, in particular liberal arts college education that helps you read, write, and think critically. The backup for that, I wouldn't even say a backup, the alternative, and the other ones I've seen succeed have been those with military experience that get similar skills and training in the military. Without those, you'll have a very difficult time getting into senior leadership positions. The other thing I'll add is the reality is a vast majority of people get their foot in the door doing the campaign politics side of getting elected to office. So you go and work for a candidate, they get elected, and then they hire you to serve in that senior leadership position because they've developed that trust in you. That's how I got my foot in the door, and a vast majority of my colleagues in similar roles around the country, that's how they got their foot in the door. And that's easy to do. You just pick up the phone, call the campaign or the local party or wherever you might live. They're always looking for volunteers. So that would be my pitch for that.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to thank the entire panel for taking the time to share your stories with the students today. It was very valuable for them to get a better understanding of how the federal government works, but also, more importantly, about some career opportunities if they'd like to pursue that within the federal government, within the military. So again, thank you for your time.